I can't get rid of this Bond villain accent. So what I try to do, it sounds like I'm blackmailing Liam Neeson on the other end of the line, and he's going to come after me very soon. So it's not a good voice for videos, is it?
Welcome to the Product Agility Podcast, the missing link between agile and product. The purpose of this podcast is to share practical tips, strategies, and stories from world-class thought leaders and practitioners. Why, I hear you ask? Well, I want to increase your knowledge and your motivation to experiment so that together we can create ever more successful products. My name is Ben Maynard, and I'm your host. What has driven me for the last decade to bridge the gap between agility and product is a deep-rooted belief that people and products evolving together can achieve mutual
This is the Product Agility Podcast, as you've probably ascertained from the introduction. Unless you skip the introduction, in which case I'll say it again. This is the Product Agility Podcast, and I'm your host, Ben Maynard. Today we're joined by somebody that I first met, I'm trying to figure this out, a long time ago, over 10 years ago.
Kindergarten.
That long ago. When I was working at the Royal Bank of Scotland, we got this gentleman in because we were just blown away by two of his books, Bridging the Communications Gap and Specification by Example. We were trying to release a big old chunky product, and we had began to play around with automated testing, so we got this person in to lend us a hand. And since then, this person has just been prolific in what he's done and what he's given to the agile and product communities. His name is Gojko Adzic.
Wonderful, kind of correctly, yes. Excellent. Thank you for trying it.
I tried. I always like to try. And he is an author of Specification by Example, Bridging the Communication Gap, Impact Mapping, a new book, a Lizard Optimization, and 5 other books, I think, as well. Oh, you got your user story mapping book as well, which I think, or user stories.
Yeah, I'm up to 9 now.
9 books. Creator of a really useful tool I was using many years ago called MindMup, and now creator of a tool which is a tool where you can convert PowerPoints into movies and audio using their text to speech. So today we're going to be exploring Narrakit, his journey in creating it, the product management bumps and hurdles, and really looking to understand more about just what is lizard optimization. So Gojko, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for inviting me to come on. It's always lovely to talk to you.
Thank you. You say that, and yet it's been 10 years. So not that lovely that we haven't made any effort to do this earlier.
Okay, you caught me there, so not that lovely.
No, but
the garden experience was for me, so
it's tolerable. It's tolerable. No, I've always been a huge fan. I'm just in awe, and I am genuinely over the moon that you've made time to. Just have a conversation with me, right? The fact it's recorded and it's going to go out to all of our hundreds. Just a bonus for them, really. I'm really excited, and I wish that we could have done it face to face, but maybe one day when you get out from behind your keyboard from all the coding you were doing, maybe you're up somewhere. Anyway, for those listeners that maybe don't know so much about you and want to know a little bit more, could you give us a quick potted history into how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, I've always enjoyed developing code. I started building code when I was a kid, copying and pasting from a German magazine about Commodore 64 and kind of making the computer do crazy stuff that I couldn't even understand what I was copying and pasting. Yeah, I kind of loved it so much that I really never considered doing anything else as a career apart from kind of programming. But when I started hitting all these bumps where people were giving me stuff to build that made no sense, and they were kind of working in a way that created lots of bottlenecks and things like that. So I started learning all I can about all the other stuff like testing and product management and things like that. And I ended up writing a few books, mostly as a way to free up my short-term memory. I stole that idea from Henrik Nieberg. I saw him talk at a conference where he said he writes books because he doesn't have enough short-term memory to keep everything he said, and he's interested in too many things. And yes, some of these bottlenecks that I ended up hitting, other people hit as well, and they liked kind of my ideas on how to solve them. So I became a consultant, ended up traveling like mad. Then realized that I like coding more than traveling, and ended up building my own product. And I launched MindMup in 2014, I think. We started building it in 2013, and I kind of started building Narrakit in 2018. So it's been a while. And yeah, I'm these days mostly kind of building my own products and doing everything from product management, development, sales, support, pre-sales, after sales, troubleshooting, ops. Yeah, I'm making coffee, so I'm the coffee lady in the company as well. So yeah, I learned how to make good coffee as well during this experience. So that's kind of my journey to here.
I think you're such an incredibly unique individual. Like you're so, I don't know. I know it's amazing. Like you do stuff and you do it really well. Whether it's writing a book, whether it's creating a product, I think you're brilliant.
I'm really passionate about these things, and I think when you're passionate about something, then the details matter, and that's like for the book that we did. I worked with a graphics designer called Nicola. And we like spent a lot of time on tiny minute details you might not even notice when you're reading the book, but the end result is something that's very pleasurable to read.
Can't wait to read it. I haven't read it yet. I'm behind the curve. I have a huge.
Well, it's not come out yet. It comes out in 2 days, so you're not.
Oh, there you go. But the podcast will come out after that, so I could have.
Excellent here. So, but by the time the podcast comes out, you might have already read it. So, you're aligned to your audience.
Oh, it's hurting my head. Is time linear? Does that even come into the conversation?
Yeah, it's always time is always a problem, especially in software systems.
It was a bank holiday in the UK on Monday, and I woke up and the first thing I thought was, God, I'm so pleased I don't work in a bank anymore, having to deal with systems and bank holidays and figuring out kind of trading calendars. Oh, I'm so happy that's no longer part of my life. Anyway, enough.
So, the interesting question is, why are you allowed to take a bank holiday if you don't work in a bank? That's
I did. I've got all my money in banks. Maybe instead of interest, I get a day off.
The money is on holiday, and you're by implication a holiday yourself.
Yeah, bank holidays in the UK used to be great because everything's shut. It was like lockdown. There was just it was great. Nowadays, everything's open. Not everyone gets a day off.
There were bank holidays would never work in Serbia because people don't keep their money in banks. Nobody trusts the banks. So
maybe on something.
You have to have a trust holiday, but then that has like a different kind of meaning to it, doesn't it?
Hey, let's get back on track a little bit. So Narrakit. Why is it called Narrakit? And what? And I gave it a really crappy overview. Like, to tell us a bit more about Narrakit, because you started this development 6 years ago.
Yeah, so I was like trying to do lots of demo and promo videos for MindMup. That's the other tool we built, and I hated the experience because, first of all, I'm not a video editing professional. I can dabble in it, but it takes me a long time to do anything useful. The second thing is, I can't get rid of this Bond villain accent. So what I try to do, it sounds like I'm blackmailing Liam Neeson on the other end of the line, and he's going to come after me very soon. So it's not a good voice for editing videos, is it? And so it used to take me about maybe 2 or 3 hours to do a 5-minute demo video of something new we release. And as a developer, I thought, well, most of this has nothing to do with me. It's all repetitive. You have like an intro sequence, an outro sequence, a bunch of screenshots and some explanation there. Can I automate this? And then I built a bunch of shell scripts that does the video editing thing, and text-to-speech engines started becoming good enough around then. And they increased in quality significantly since then, but they were just becoming good enough. And I realized I can actually plug in a text-to-speech engine and just do the whole thing from a markdown script. And it reduced my time to make promo videos from 2 or 3 hours for a 5-minute video to about 10 minutes, which is wonderful time saving. And I thought other people might like this as well. So I kind of repackaged the shell scripts and built a tool around it. And it was wonderful because there was so much learning and so much discovery every time I did anything with that, because obviously the audience is not the same as I am. People were getting stuck and struggling in lots of different places. So, for example, instead of just kind of building the script and things like that, I did a bunch of custom potential user interviews, and it turns out lots of them were actually using PowerPoints to plan the video. They would use PowerPoint as a very quick way to storyboard things because people know how to use PowerPoint. And then from that storyboard, they would build a screencast, or they would build a training video or something like that. And I thought, well, why am I asking people to build a PowerPoint to storyboard and then export the PowerPoint into images and then add voiceovers and a bunch of other things. Why not just let them upload the PowerPoint? And it was a huge revelation because then, people started building a lot more videos than they were with scripts. It was a lot easier. And there was a wonderful example of, I think, Kathy Sierra has this wonderful book for product people. I think everybody should read it. It's called Badass. And it talks about this kind of suck zone. And the suck zone is the initial period of engagement where people don't feel confident enough that they're productive, and most users get stuck in the suck zone. And a good product helps users escape the suck zone very quickly. And instead of this whole, process where they would plan and then export and upload, by letting them, I was allowing users to escape the suck zone very quickly. And that significantly increased the usage. It created a whole new category of users where marketing people started using it. And marketing people got in touch with educators, so educators started using it. And this was kind of around the time where COVID struck, and it was kind of, I guess, everything was going digital. Lots of university professors had their lectures in PowerPoint. They needed to put it online, and it was a godsend for them because it was very, very easy to kind of convert PowerPoint into online videos there. And it basically grew from there. It's has about 9 million active users last year. People are building hundreds of thousands of things every day with it. I'm quite happy with how it turned out. And, especially given the fact that I'm still the only person working on it.
That's mad. Yeah. What a story. And so it started, you were solving a problem for you.
Yeah, you scratch your own itch. I think that's how lots of products get started, by scratching your own itch, because you kind of see a problem and you want to solve it.
And then you did some user interviews. You learned more about how people were kind of preparing for the process of creating a video, and just thought, well, why don't you just shortcut that? And just to kind of use that raw information, the raw deck they were using to plan the video to create something themselves. And so the videos that get created, it just transitions through the slides, or does it do anything more?
Well, mostly the transitions through the slides, but you can include videos into PowerPoint as well. So a lot of people are using it to, just marketing agencies are using it to prototype their videos with customers. Educators are using it to create online lectures. People are using it to do product demo videos, kind of explainer videos and screencasts and a bunch of other things.
And so then from all of this, you come up with this idea of lizard optimization, which is the title of your new book. Yeah,
that's the new book. It was, because I'm the only person working on this, it was relatively easy for me to kind of short circuit the distance between product management and support. In lots of organizations, you have this kind of whole customer engagement, customer servicing, customer support part where it's totally disconnected from product management. And the people are facing problems every day, or they're getting stuck. And when it propagates to product management, it's often, triaged, put either as a bug or as a kind of potential improvement. And then very, very rarely kind of it gets into the actual product unless it's a critical thing. And I was able to kind of short circuit that and complement the research that I've done before doing something with feedback after it was done. And it was amazing because it unlocked exponential growth. And that was a big lesson for me, how optimizing the product for people who are really getting stuck with it because of weird edge cases. And you might call them non-technical, you might call them stupid, you might call them, whatever you want, offensive, and developers often do that. But the fact is that users are getting stuck somewhere. And sometimes these people are just, can't be helped. Sometimes they're getting stuck because they're trying to do something malicious, but sometimes they're getting stuck because they have a genuine use case and they are not being able to solve it. And then they end up doing crazy workarounds. They end up doing crazy things you never thought about. And by looking at that, I've realized I can extract very useful signals for improving the product. For example, there were a bunch of users who were paying me to create blank videos. And
it sounds like good money to me.
It sounds like good money, but it was something I really couldn't understand. And I thought there was a bug in the system because the videos were all coming out white, with sound, but white. And I was thinking, this is insane. There's a bug in the video production pipeline somewhere. people are going to ask for chargebacks. I need to fix this. And I spent a couple of days trying to figure out what went wrong, and I couldn't. So I started talking to a few of these people to say, maybe they're using some other tool to create PowerPoint, and my PowerPoint reader is not compatible with that. So it's coming out as a blank screen. But no, they were actually using PowerPoint. And then I asked one guy, well, if you open the PowerPoint, do you see anything there? Do you see anything in the slides? And he said, no, it's blank. And I was like, well, okay, so PowerPoint is broken. So no, it's not broken. I don't have anything in the slides. And I was like, well, why would you be paying me to create a white video? And it turns out that doing this kind of optimization for people who are getting stuck, I ended up creating a very easy way for people to configure text-to-speech conversion. That was much easier than with alternative tools. And some people just needed the audio. They didn't need the video. And they were going through the hassle of creating a blank PowerPoint just so they can configure the text-to-speech conversion. And then they were converting it into a video to extract an audio track to use for voicemail messages, for audiobooks, for podcasts, and things like that. And again, this is one of those examples of, people getting stuck in the suck zone. Why would you force people to do that? Why not remove obstacles? And I kind of kept removing obstacles, and this really unlocked lots of new use cases and unlocked exponential growth for the product. So the idea of lizard optimization comes from an article I read by Scott Alexander, who wrote about this thing called the lizardman's constant. He invented it in research, and he was doing some research that combined demographics with kind of psychological research. And they were trying to figure out, would there be differences if you account for demographic data in how people behave? And they were constantly finding weird answers in the demographic data. So
American as a gender.
Gender, yeah. There were people who were doing Martian as nationality. And, some of these are just malicious. Some of these are people clicking the wrong button by mistake. Some of these are people being distracted or not understanding the question and things like that. And he said, you need to kind of account for all these crazy answers, because there will be some percentage of people who just, do things you can't explain. And the percentage is not actually that small. He says that the lizardman's constant is 4%. And out of just fun, whenever I'm faced with some kind of total brain melting puzzle, like why would people be doing this? I started thinking about, well, maybe, it's not a human, it's a lizard. And I kind of, it's one of these lizardman's constant thing, and they have their own lizard logic and things like that. So I thought, well, I'm actually optimizing the product a bit for lizards here. And that's where the idea of lizard optimization came in. But basically, what's interesting about this is if you can reduce churn by 1%, it compounds growth massively. If you can help 1% of your users not get stuck and not drop off and be more successful, it can unlock a lot of growth, but it can also point to some really kind of interesting feedback, because it doesn't matter how much research you do, the research has to stop at some point. I think the product management community is much more aware of doing cheap and dirty research and easy research and iterative research and build, measure, learn and all of this stuff. But research has to stop at some point, and you have to kind of get something out. And when you get something out, the fact that you got something out changes the behavior of your users. That's a very interesting concept to think about. Before they had something and after they have something, their behavior changes. Bruce Tonazzini, who's a legendary UX designer, talks about this as a complexity paradox. And he says basically the commuting time is fixed. The time you have for a task is fixed. And then if you give people a better tool, they will take on a more complicated task because they still have 10 minutes to do something or 2 hours to do something. So they take on more complicated tasks. So the very fact that you gave something to users changes their behavior, which means that the research you've done before releasing is not necessarily relevant for their behavior after releasing. And it kind of impacts itself. And this is, I think, I really got me to think about all these cases when I was working as a developer and business analysts were giving me requirements, and you do something and then the user wants something else, and you think, well, the users don't know what they want. Not necessarily. The very fact that you're giving them something changes what they can do, and they can do more. So basically, the idea is to look at what the crazy people are doing, look at the things you don't understand, and those are your blind spots in research. Those are things you couldn't spot because what you delivered changed the context, and now people are doing other things. And then kind of to figure out good signals from that to improve the product. And I'll give you another example. So I created this kind of screen where people can just upload a script. Instead of creating a video, just get a voiceover. And that took off really nicely. That was kind of optimization for the PowerPoint thing. But then people kept uploading files that I wasn't supporting. So I started supporting Word documents and PDFs. People started selecting APK files and Android packages. Yeah. I don't know what the right way to read an APK file is. I still don't know that. I have a couple of hundred people every day trying to do that still. My best guess is that it's one of these, where you leave a USB key with a virus in front of a building and then somebody kind of loads it just to see what happens. So maybe they think if I upload an APK file, somebody's going to load it on an Android app. And yeah. I can't explain it. There's no way to explain it. But there were a few people every day uploading subtitle files. I never thought about that. And it's kind of reasonable to expect to produce a voiceover from a subtitle file. And my first thinking was, okay, I'll kind of ignore the timestamps. I'll just read the text. And then people kept complaining how the audio is faster or slower than the original subtitles. I was like, well, yes, because this voice is reading faster or slower. And then, I started talking to them why they're doing it. And lots of people were they had a video with subtitles and they wanted to have an alternative audio track in a different language. So they were trying
dubbing.
Dubbing, yeah, or just not, you have a corporate training video in English, you want it in French and Spanish and things like that. But you don't want to waste time re-editing the video for the differences in language. And I thought, well, that's like a couple of days of work to speed up or slow down the voice to match the timestamps. And it turned out to be one of the most profitable things I've ever done, because there's a big enterprise software company that kind of has 200,000 videos in I don't know how many languages. And for compliance reasons, they need to have it in every language that they kind of operate in. And they basically just found this thing, and instead of spending hours and hours on every video, they could use this to produce an alternate audio track in minutes. And they were more than happy to pay for that. I have churches who have sermons and things like that. They want to operate in lots of different markets, and they have a priest talking, they record him, then they use some other software to produce the subtitles and translate and use my software to do it. So it's all these kind of crazy use cases that are really interesting, but that also led to some kind of quality of life improvements for everybody, because they needed to check different segments. So I allowed them to kind of check segments easily, and that allowed to be kind of wonderfully useful for other things. So generally, the idea of lizard optimization is to look at the usages where people are misusing or abusing a system, or using the system in the ways you don't expect, and use that as signals to improve it. And I nailed it down to 4 steps, and the 4 steps for easy to make it easy for people to remember, they're starting with LZRD, like lizard. And the first is kind of learn how people are misusing a system. The second is to zero in on one behavior change, because there's going to be a lot of signal here, a lot of noise. We need to figure out the right things to improve that's consistent with our current strategy, with the current goals, with the current OKRs and things that you don't want to improve everything all the time. And you don't want to follow every lizard there is. We want to use that data to extract a useful signal. And then we need to remove obstacles to user success. That's the R part. And the thing is interesting, if you have lizards interacting with your system, all the acquisition and marketing is already done. That's the most difficult part, in my opinion, because I'm a developer and I dabble in product management and testing. I'm really bad at marketing and sales. So if somebody's already interacting with my product, the most difficult part is done. But they're hitting a roadblock, they're hitting a boundary, so they remove obstacles to their success. And that's how, optimize, get them out of the suck zone, remove PowerPoint, get them to kind of do a video and optimize as much as possible what people can do in the first 5 minutes, 10 minutes with your software. and reduce the time it takes to do a complex task, get people to be productive, remove obstacles to their success. And then the last part is really to double check and to make sure that what I thought was a good idea is actually a good idea. Because remember, we're talking about people who don't follow the same logic as the product management at this point. And what you think is a good idea might not be. And they might do something different. They might not get there all the way. And this is where operational metrics and observability and user behavior metrics come in quite a lot. There's like a slightly less formal and easy way to remember this kind of LZRD is lizard alert, zoom in, rescue them, and then double check. And kind of going through this cycle complements research. Complements research both in a way of kind of identifying blind spots that we didn't know about, but also identifying the changed context. After we've done something, what now? How do people behave differently now?
How do you figure out what not to do something about? Because if you have a product, or let's say trying to follow some kind of plan as a parallel to this, because I'm thinking here about agile and responding to change over following a plan. Some people see that as always respond to change, whatever the change is, let's just go and do it, because surely responding to a change is more important than sticking to the thing we were doing before, or achieving our product vision, or reaching our goal, whatever it might be. So how do you make the decisions for your product as to what stuff you should then go and do something about versus, do you know what, Mr. Liz are doing it, and we're never going to go down that route. We don't want it to be used for that particular purpose.
So I think there's a couple of things there. One thing that really helped me as a mental model with my products is the 5 stages of growth from the Lean Analytics book. And I think it's a wonderful model. It's not that well known, and I think more people should kind of know about that. They looked at lots of different organizations and growth or product growth and how the goals changed through the growth for successful products and less successful products. And they created a sequence of goals that's logical to look at. And I wrote about that in the User Stories book, and I mention it in the Lizard Optimization book, because I think it's really a good first pass for aligning on big ticket items and goals. So the 5 stages are basically empathy, where we need to prove that we're actually solving some problem. That's kind of important. Then they talk about stickiness is the next stage, and stickiness is the stage where we need to prove that there is a potential market for it. And the way they talk about it is that if people are using your product a lot, and if they reach for your product when they have this problem, then there's a potential market for it. You've solved a problem that's important to them in a good way. Then they talk about kind of the next stage. They call it virality. I really hate the name because it's kind of, startup-y, and you can't talk about virality in large organizations. But I think kind of if you rename it growth, then it makes more sense. So at this point, so you've proven that you've solved the problem that's important enough. There is a potential market for it. Now you need to prove that you can actually reach that market. Because maybe the market is out of reach, the competitors are too strong, or maybe the market is not big enough. So kind of in that stage, we're looking at usage numbers, raw usage numbers, user numbers, retention numbers, and things like that. Then the next stage is revenue, which is kind of self-explanatory, but kind of for non-profit orgs, I like to talk about extracting value from the product and figuring out how can we scale the value extraction. At this point, not the value extraction for the users, but the value extraction for you or the business. And then the step after that they call scale, which is kind of all about consolidating things, reducing operational costs, reducing the cost of delivery, optimizing how we work. And what they talk about is there's a logical sequence to these things, and you shouldn't really focus on optimizing how cheaply your product runs if not enough people are paying for it. That's because you can always optimize how cheaply your product runs. If there's not, if there's no market, it's pointless. And looking at this as a sequence really helped me figure out what went wrong with a couple of things I did in the past. We had one case where we've really nailed down the first stage. Retrospectively looking at this, we solved a useful problem, but we didn't solve the problem of stickiness. I don't remember the exact numbers, so I'm just inventing some numbers now. But let's say that out of 1,000 people that came to the website, one of them stayed on to do something useful. And then we kind of skipped that stage and we tried to do the growth stage, and we invested a lot in marketing. We brought lots of people to the website, but very few people stayed on. If we had inverted that, if we optimized the stickiness part and then did kind of marketing and growth, the outcome would have been completely different. So this product went bankrupt at the end because we spent all the money we had foolishly. Looking at this, for Narrakit, I was like very, very systematically following that. And this gives you the goals you want to focus on. In the first stage, you focus on kind of things around solving, this specific problem, figuring out, optimizing that, getting people to escape the suck zone and things like that. Then in the next stage, you focus on things that help people stay around for longer, come back more frequently, do more tasks through you and things like that. Then on the next stage, you look at how can we get our users to help us grow? How can we grow easier? How can we optimize marketing and things like that? And then kind of, I think the product is now in kind of the revenue extraction stage. So I'm looking at both kind of, how do I get people to do more through me, to pay for larger plans and things like that. And while at the same time, I like to use the other stages as constraints, as kind of what makes a box, around what's viable. So, for example, in the growth stage, I would look at how do I grow but not damage operational costs too much? Or how do I grow but not damage revenue too much, or not damage stickiness and things like that? So I use one of these things as something I want to achieve, and the others as like bounding the solution to make it viable. And that helped me quite a lot. For example, there was an insane episode a few years ago where the usage doubled overnight. And I was trying to optimize the frequency of usage. I was like, I must have done something amazing. The usage doubled overnight. But, if something's too good to be true, it usually is. So then I started looking at the metrics and thinking about, is there a bug? Maybe I'm just resubmitting every task twice. Maybe, maybe there's something weird going on. And I couldn't figure that out. And I started looking at lots of different data sources to figure out, is this genuine or not? And I realized that Google search is sending me like twice as many users as it did the day before, which is amazing because I did not optimize anything around kind of search engines and things like that. So Google occasionally changes their algorithm, through no fault of yours or no credit of yours. You might go up or down in search results and pay, maybe nice benefit. And then kind of the usage doubled the day after as well. It was like, wow, this is totally amazing. It's so there was a point where people were building 100,000 audio and video files per day, jumped to 200 to 500. And at this point, I was like, ready to celebrate. But I had a box around this for operational costs and revenue. The product uses a freemium model where basically the commercial users are paying for the cost of free users. And there's lots of free users, small percentage of commercial users. When they're balanced, it works out okay. Unfortunately, we have a massive growth of free users. There's not enough commercial users. They need to catch up. They need to experience the system well enough to catch up. And because this is all self-funded, when your growth accelerates so much and the usage increases 5 times over a couple of days, the operational costs increase 5 times, the profit doesn't. And it was kind of, if it continues like that, the product will run out of money.
Yeah.
It's my money, so I can't allow that. And I had to act very quickly and figure out what's going on. And the usage pattern of the new people was significantly different from the old people. They were spending the free tier up to the limit, and then very, very few of them were upgraded, which is really weird. And then I started looking at what's going on, and almost everybody, like 90-something%, people were coming from India, not upgrading. Now, my first thought was, okay, I have a payment processing problem with India. India has these weird banking rules. People don't have cards and things like that. But that wasn't true, because if I looked at, I had customers from India before, there was a much, much smaller percentage even of those upgrading. And in order to avoid basically going bankrupt, I realized that the growth is just, growing too fast. So the bounding box around viability is wrong. So I temporarily blocked people from India by geo IP. And that kind of solved the problem for a day or two, but then the rest of the world just started kind of popping up like mad. And people were building Hindi language audio from all over the world, which makes no sense. So then I realized, okay, there's something really weird going on here. And I kind of tried to figure out what to do. And one of the kind of statistics that came out that was really weird is my bot detection algorithm was being triggered all the time. Most of this free usage was coming from data centers, not from residential internet connections. So I realized, okay, I've shut down India, but then what happened is they just started using VPNs to switch and go around the world. So I kind of blocked VPNs. And then I started getting hundreds of weird emails every day. The guy who was saying that he's too spiritual to use a regular internet connection, he needs to use a VPN.
Yeah, okay. I can't
Listen.
Yeah.
There was an insurance company and they were telling me how they're blocked accessing the system now because they're using a VPN. I said, well, that's not good. Obviously, can you give me your account name? And he said, we don't have an account. We're using the free system. It's like, well, you're an insurance company, man. It's like, and they were insisting that they turn their access back on because it's critical for their business. And they've been using it for a year. It's like it's critical for the business workflows, but they never considered actually creating a commercial account. And there were a couple of these kind of crazy emails, of course, but there was one guy who was sending me emails from these throwaway Outlook numeric email addresses where you can't even reply to them. And I know it's the same person because he's sending the same email, like, I'm blocked, I'm going to sue you, and it's like, well, it's insane. It's just insane. And then a week later, the same person contacted me from a Gmail address and said, he paid quite a lot of money actually to create an account and he was paying for access, but now I've blocked VPNs, he was blocked. And this was like a wonderful case of a lizard where basically this use case I've never even considered. I don't use VPNs in anger. I don't need to use VPNs in anger. But he lived in a country that was kind of spying on the residents. He was a bit paranoid about the content he was creating. And I think there's really no reason why I would block that, especially if he's a commercial user. So what I did later is kind of allow people to use VPNs, but only if they're a commercial user. And if they're not a commercial user, a nice kind of message comes up saying, well, you're trying to use a VPN, to prevent abuse, that's blocked for free users. If you're a commercial user, just sign in. Yeah. Brilliant. If you're not a commercial user, here's a button to, upgrade. As a result of that, basically, we ended up the month with a 25% increase in revenue, which is quite good.
Wow.
Because there were lots of people like him using VPNs for different purposes for whatever reason that I didn't consider before. And, now we can talk about, okay, that's a gap in my research. We can talk about how I should have done that. But effectively, by figuring this thing out, I was able to, very quickly, first of all, unlock growth. And the second thing is prevent abuse. And I ended up actually finding at the end what caused the growth. There was a video on YouTube of somebody demonstrating in Hindi how to abuse my system.
Really?
Yeah. And I couldn't understand Hindi at all, but I played the video and I found that kind of at some point he talks about VPN. And you can see he's turning on a VPN. And kind of the interesting thing about this was that kind of the person was suggesting going through Google because lots of sites that have a paywall kind of allow you to access content through Google. So the Google search increase was a byproduct of this, where basically he was teaching people completely irrelevant for my website. I wasn't doing a paywall or something like that, but for newspapers and things like that, if you go through Google, you get slightly better content, I guess. So the uptick in Google search was the result of this video and this person recommending for people when they're abusing the system to go through Google search rather than going directly. But as you know, benefit of how Google works, the more people you click on it, the more relevance they give you.
Yeah.
So I got like a halo effect of that for months and months and months. So going back to your original question, how do you figure out what to work on? I kind of tend to focus on the goals that are around the 5 stages of growth that I want to grow in, but then use the other stages as a bounding mechanism to kind of put constraints, to put goalposts, to put like so not goalposts, the rail guards or the bumpers on the road to prevent me from going off in the wrong direction. And when doing that, you can spot very easily if something you're doing is like not delivering the effect that you want or delivering a wrong effect or maybe delivering a different effect, but it's also okay. And as long as you're in the right lane, why not? And that's how kind of this discovery works really well.
What was the name of the book that came from? Lean Analytics. Fantastic. Right. So our time is like coming to a close. I've learned so much, and I'm going to be doing this afternoon is creating an account on Narrakit and having a play around with it because I'm intrigued.
Upload an Android package file just so you can bump the analytics of.
I will. Have you ever been tempted to install one of the APKs or like a?
No. I wouldn't even have what to install it on. I don't have an Android mobile device, but maybe I should buy one and just install it.
It'd be fascinating. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be connected to anything. Like. Who knows? I mean, that's just me, just being a little bit nefarious. Honestly, there's so much. I mean, I think the Narrakit story is just fantastic, and the fact you're doing all of this is wonderful, and the way that you've approached it, and just your ability to experience these things in real life, to get a product into market, to be coding it, to play all these roles, and still, then find something new to write about and to think about and to empty your short-term memory in a book, which is, I'm sure it's going to be fascinating. I can't wait to read it. It's what you were saying earlier about product management and support and closing that loop. I think it's so critically important, and I don't think enough people really appreciate that the teams at the end there who are kind of dealing with customer support and dealing with the inquiries, actually, that's a goldmine of information. And I think I was talking to Jeff Gotthelf about this, and they're saying, when we're talking about like sensing and responding to what's happening, actually, that is such a huge wealth of really valuable information.
It's your sensor, and yeah. Kind of, for MindMup, because again, it's a small self-funded product, and there were only two of us, and we hate doing support. We kind of try to optimize the product every time somebody came with a support case. And I've later read about this from in the Amazon way, I think, or something like that. They mentioned how Jeff Bezos had this thing where he said that people should talk to their friends, not to their vendors. And the fact that somebody's calling Amazon is a sign that something's gone really, really badly. They try to kind of use those interactions as a signal to figure out what went wrong. Why did you have to contact Amazon as a person? And then to systematically prevent these things. And I really love that as an idea. And it felt like really consistent with what we were doing for MindMup, because in a sense, if you make the product good enough that it doesn't cause support, it's better for you and it's better for other people as well.
Yeah.
And kind of this whole lizard optimization thing is just kind of taking that to another level, like not just solving the support stuff, but actually using it as an insight on where to start growing the product, what kind of ideas to build so that you can solve new use cases, not just kind of, fix support cases.
Was it? I don't think it was you that told me this, but I think I read this around the time that we first met about it was a tool that was bought by Cisco, and it was originally started off as a support tool, but they found that no one was using like a lot of the support functions, but the screen sharing functionality was being used like incredibly consistently, and that was all people were using it for. So they looked at that and said, okay, well, maybe that should be the product, and they carved it out, and that became the product.
Yeah, and, there's a lovely example in Founders at Work by Jessica Livingston, and in late 90s, like you had these people who were incredibly smart, and they built a very, very efficient cryptography library that was able to run on low power devices very efficiently, and they tried to figure out a use for it. So they thought, well, cryptography, low power devices, maybe some kind of money transfer. So they built this thing where you can like bump two Palm Pilot devices together and transfer money from one device to another to utilize the library they built. And then they built a website. It was late 90s, so, web was coming up. And they built a website to promote it. And the website was very rudimentary. It was a demo. It was not kind of intended to be used in anger. And then all of a sudden, somebody realized that people are using the website for money transfers a lot more than they are using the Palm Pilot app. The whole idea of the website was it is going to promote the Palm Pilot app, not kind of take over. But the company was actively fighting against money transfers on the website because they thought that's kind of distracting from the goals. It's not achieving the key results. It's not achieving the objective. And they were fighting for more than a year against these people, prohibiting them from using it. And it was kind of inexplicable to the product management why this is taken off so much. But when they looked at the numbers at the end, they realized, well, this is the product is not a Palm Pilot transfer. The product, the website is the product. And that company is PayPal. They're now one of the biggest payment processors in the world. Palm Pilots no longer exist. And at the point where they figured out what to do, the website had 1.5 million users, and the Palm Pilot app had like 12,000 users. So it was kind of obvious what to do. But the thing is, so many organizations, product management fights against this. Like we waste so much time trying to keep our vision clear and steer towards the goals we set, instead of trying to figure out, this thing has taken off. Let's be opportunistic about that.
I think that's for me. This is why I love and also hate. I have very little time for product visions. I think like good product visions for me, it doesn't matter the channel you're using, the mechanism by which you're trying to solve the problem. Ultimately, if you really understand the problem you're trying to solve, then it doesn't matter how that manifests. I think when people are so, for good reasons and for bad reasons, just obsessed with the particular channel or the particular outlet for trying to solve the problem, rather than actually saying, no, but what is the problem here? Yeah, I mean, we get caught up just wasting our time and fighting against actually something which is the thing that's going to make the big difference to us.
I mean, there's a lovely example of that, totally unrelated to software, in Seeing Like a State. That's another wonderful book everybody should read, just for kind of systems thinking examples and things like that. And talk about how you have like building a university, especially like several buildings and people need to go across and things like that. Lots of universities, when they're kind of building up a new campus, they try to build roads or paths and things like that. And then they get angry when students are going across the lawn and not going on a path, and then they start to put up kind of rules and things like that. But the opposite is basically just not build any roads, build a lawn. So kind of students could go anywhere they want, and then look at where the students are going to actually build paths. And that's kind of, you complement the research you've done, you have some ideas, you have kind of your plan, but you actually figure out where the people are going, and then you follow them to remove obstacles.
What's that? Desire lines?
Yeah, I guess, yeah. Probably, yeah.
Yeah. And the book you mentioned there, was that the fifth disc?
I found about that in Seeing Like a State.
Yeah, okay. Because I remember reading that. It was in a book that I was reading when I was becoming a large-scale Scrum trainer. I remember reading about that because Craig and Bars talk about it in regards to architecture.
Yeah, I mean, it's not particularly related to software or a specific type of product. I think figuring out what the reality and understanding that reality might not match your plan is a wonderful thing, and it might not even match your vision. And then the question is, do you follow the reality or do you get stuck in your vision?
Yeah, exactly. Love it. Okay, thank you so much for giving me your time. You've been very incredibly gracious, and I love listening to your stories. There's so much great information. I think there's so much people there to listen and to make notes on. And so if you are listening to this and there's something here that you've really liked, then please do share it on LinkedIn, share it on Instagram even. I think we have quite a decent following on Instagram, maybe even TikTok. I don't mind. But tell the world about it, because I think Gojko says some really awesome stuff that I think more people should hear. If people do want to find out more information about Narrakit, then is it narrakit.com?
Yeah, narrakit.com.
Excellent. And if they want to find out more about you, you've got a website, haven't you?
Yeah. I'm relatively easy to find online. Basically, Gojko is such a rare name that it's very unusual even for where I come from. And if you Google for my name, you'll either see a footballer who sleeps with supermodels. That's obviously not me. Or you'll see kind of an East German actor in spaghetti westerns. He's bare-chested with feathers in his hair. He's playing kind of American Indians. That's not me as well. I can't, don't have enough care for that. I'm the third one, so
you're the third one.
It's easy to find online.
Well, we'll make sure there's some links in the show notes so that people can find it easy to save them typing. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on. It's been awesome. I'm going to spend my afternoon mucking around on Narrakit, I think, which I'm quite looking forward to. Do you have a Google Slides integration, or do I have to use PowerPoint?
I don't yet have Google Slides, but I am planning to do it at some point. Lots of people are trying to do that, so that's part of the lizard optimization thing.
Okay, yeah, I'll try not to do anything too weird to give you false signals and to get you investigating stuff, which maybe is just me dicking around with it. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. We're going to be back again next week. Actually, before we wrap up, is there anything else you want to share with people? Anything else you want to tell people about?
Well, I can create a coupon code for the book, and people can download the book at a discount if they listen to the podcast, and maybe you can distribute the link.
Yeah, absolutely. Now make so give that. We will get that. We will put that in the show notes, and we will use it on some of the promotion we're doing for this episode as well. This episode will be coming out around mid-September, so just before we're off to Productized, where our number of listeners just always grows exponentially. So it'll be a great time. There's a great market for you there, I think, as well, of interested people in regards to your book. So we'll get that done.
Wonderful, thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, so everyone, thank you for coming on. Everyone, thank you very much for listening. We'll be back again same time next week.